Everybody, and welcome back to Arc Rex Temple of Ages, part 7.3. I've been working on the titles a bit, trying to change them up, so hopefully you can get more of an idea what's on the inside of it, and the topics being discussed before you have to watch the whole thing. Because video titles like row, row, row aren't really giving you that much context of what's going on. So starting out, we're going to be looking at a lot of AI videos, and I found a bunch of special ones that it's very interesting that we're not just making AI videos. We're making very self-aware, fourth wall breaking AI videos in a very kind of ironic and darkly comedic way, especially considering that it might reflect truths about our own life. So this one's about a non-existent car show. And that's what the person hosting the car show is saying. So they're acknowledging that, at least to us, here in this physical reality, that car show doesn't exist. Because based upon my theory, maybe something like this exists somewhere else, but right now we still can't bridge that gap. So we're still just kind of making fun of it. And this is a popular, probably one of the biggest streamers in the world right now, and disclosure, was going over AI videos, and this is an AI comedian saying that an AI girl that doesn't exist in our world was telling him he's made out of prompts, which to us is how we see it. And this is like one of those interview on the side of the street videos, and she's like, the biggest red flag is when a guy believes in the prompt theory. So that's basically like saying you believe in simulation theory, or like the Matrix movie, because that's just what the Matrix movie is a bunch of computer prompts and computer code put together. Yet now we're getting to look through it with the lens of AI and making these hyper-realistic movie videos. And there was this slide here that just was what I was talking about in the last episode about this guy saying, I don't want to be in your AI movie. Please stop writing this prompt. So, that entertainment versus actually having to live out the entertainment that you find entertaining if you're in the audience. So it's all the perspective of where you are in relation to it. But when you're the one having the prompts being messed with by some being above you, it can get kind of, I don't know, let's just say dark at times without looking at the larger context and picture of things. And here's, they took his face and put it on an AI model. So it's just, it's just going to raise so much of these questions and making us look at ourselves and how that's going to affect when all these things start meshing. And not only that, but how other people might perceive you or be able to show others, and they'll perceive a version of you that's not even real. So we're really going to have to start asking, are these real? And, here's a riot of a bunch of people that don't actually exist here saying we're not prompts. We're not just NPCs. We're sentient people. And this guy's being interrogated, and he's like, will the prompt writer save you from me? Where is he? You still believe we're made of prompts? So, it's, you could replace that with, like, God or something like that. It's like you believe in this, being you can't see somewhere that's influencing your life and what you think and all of that. And this was an AI video about nothing, where it's just, the characters themselves are saying, oh, so we're in an AI video that's about nothing. So it's this continuously fourth wall breaking thing. And then we have the reimagining of history. So we have Plato teaching geometry like he's in a modern classroom with a web camera. And the streamer saying, like, what's this going to be like in a year? If we're already breaking this point. And that's kind of my question is, especially if we're just getting started. And this is like one of the top streamers in the world, and I think he was kind of put there. And it's kind of interesting because his life is just like this horror story if you actually look at the details, and he lives in all this squalor. And I don't think that's an accident. Like, I think that's a part of the whole system. And, like, if you want to be the top dog in this place, at least in the false system, you know, it's going to be, you know, really weird. And just that it can be a place for massive disclosure because that's where all the young people are looking. And that's kind of one of the focuses of this presentation I'll get to later. This is a video the Dora brothers made about 2 months ago, I believe. And it also has AI people in it. But this one's also very fourth wall breaking. But it's also very apocalyptic at the same time. And it's switching between all these AI characters. And I talked about this guy last time. He's talking to chat. And I wanted to give context to this, like, this is a streamer looking at a video as I'm looking at this video of both them, and he's asking his chat, is this real? As I might ask you, you know, where do we draw the line at real? And how we're all asking that, and that just kind of goes back to Plato's cave. You know, asking, well, what's actually real? And he goes back to the idea of the survival game. And I always found this interesting. And here was that Warhammer one I was talking about yesterday as well. That we're kind of in-facing this fourth wall breaking view, and that there's a person acting out the script that has an audience that he can communicate with, or at least they're watching him in, you know, a very Truman Show-esque way. Yet we're combining that with all these different stories we have for the entertainment value, at least in my opinion. That's why I think I'm here anyway, in a large part. And one of my favorite one of my favorite video game modes ever is hardcore video games. I almost play nothing else because a lot of games, they have this thing called a HUD, or I forget the exact acronym, but basically it's all the toolbars, it's your inventory, your health, you have a little mini map. You can talk to your team, and it tells you all the details of the game that help you play it better. And there's all different kinds of versions of it. But in our reality in hardcore video games, that's all taken away. So it's just what you see. You know, some of them let you see your health, but you can't see your ammo. You know, just like in real life, when you hold a gun, you can't, unless you build a display that does. But if you could start to see those things. And I went over this movie called Free Guy, where when he puts these glasses on, he basically gets that video game heads-up display about everything. Like, imagine if you could always see what your heart rate was and, you know, what was going on with your body, and it had, like, a diagram of your body with all a bunch of stuff listed out, and, you know, it had information on other people, kind of like how you'd imagine AI glasses do in a rudimentary way now. And that kind of goes back to They Live. You know, these glasses allowing you to see through reality into the truth. And we can look back at, you know, this idea of prompts and code and simulation theory. And that goes back to the Matrix itself and becoming aware of these things and that you can change them. This is back to the AI video. This guy is trying to infiltrate an executive class bunker. Something that's going to become more and more a part of our lives. You know, if the power ever goes out, which will be interesting. I didn't know this was the next slide, but here's like a, you know, online truther-esque person saying like, yeah, they'll shut the grid down. And this guy is saying it's collapsing exactly as predicted. I just bought a bunker with doggy coin. And when I was in high school, my friend bought Dogecoin, and he was memeing it and talking about it almost every day. And this actually could have made me a millionaire if I would have invested in it. And, you know, I don't hate that, but I just find the irony, especially last episode, we were linking the Chosen One with the moon a lot. So this idea of ascending to, you know, the Buddha on the moon. So this idea of ascending to the moon and raising your consciousness to escape this matrix ties to this crypto coin, which just kind of blows my mind a little bit. And this is just the universe asking us to go deeper into our practice, you know, to find ourselves in this chaos. And the world's in flames, but I'm on track. This is a weird AI video, by the way, when you're watching it. And during the apocalypse, I'm staying grateful, staying blessed. My link's in the bio. And for my manifestation course that literally predicted all of this. So we're also talking about people predicting it. And that was also kind of a theme yesterday I was talking about with the Eastern anime, is the one guy that predicted the coming of the transcendental spirit of peace. And, sometimes he calls stuff. And this guy is saying Earth's just cleansing the toxicity we've been ignoring. And that's kind of what I'm saying. The darkness is coming to light, and a lot of people don't want to get ready for that. I do. And here's another truther show. And he's saying it's entirely possible that the Matrix is glitching out, as his show is glitching out. And that also explains the chaos magic happening. As it's glitching out, it's allowing these holes to open up and these other narratives to come in because the order's breaking down and leaving space for this new thing to pop in. And this is an Alex Jones type parody. And he's just saying here that these people that we say run the show, or at least the surface level economy and politics and all that, they're not going to save anybody. Their plan is whenever their house of card topples, they're just going to run to a bunker with a bunch of security guards and just, wait it out in a bunch of debauchery. And everything else is on us. And finding that common ground in between us. And that, we have to save ourselves in a way. I want to get to the point where we're so prepared I can go help save others. I like thinking of the Titanic. If you built your own self-sufficient little boat, you could go around and try to pick up other people that were drowning because you had the extra supplies to pick them up, dry them off, feed them, and get them out of that crazy water and that environment, because the Robo-Titanic's going to pop up and start scooping people up because that's its whole point, just like in the Matrix movie. It needs people in pods because we're the most important thing here. Yet, I think it's a cyclical cycle, and just based on what we've seen so far, they're not making room for everybody here in a good way. It seems that they don't want that many people, or they don't need that many people, especially since we're about to automate everything, especially intellectually. So you just need people purely, you know where I'm going with that, but I'll go back to this. And this news anchor is saying everything in this video is fake, including me. I am a construct created by the Door Brothers. So that's like me talking to you right now saying, I'm created by the heavens and higher self, and this reality isn't actually real. Yet it just takes a very weird turn when we're the ones typing these videos out and consuming them. And here's one video of like this storm and fire brewing, and it just kind of, with that look, I kind of feel that way a bit in my soul too. So this right here is probably my favorite part of one of the weirdest, funniest, like most absurd part when I sit down and go, okay, this is what's happening in modern reality. Like, this is what they're acting out. Like, oh my gosh. So this was a concert with Little Yachty, and he does this dance where he walks out. And this became one of the first, I would say, highly successful AI videos where they could overlap an AI character on the Little Yachty as he did his dance, and it would follow his every little movement. And the guy on the bottom, I'm going to call the H-Man, because I want to see how far I can go with the censorship and all that. And going forward with this, the biggest, because the H-Man is such a big part of our zeitgeist. He was the villain of World War II, and even to today, like, it's harder to name like a bigger villainous figure in the last 200 years than the H-Man. So I think that's why it's going to be playing out more and more, and why they're picking that up as a symbol is because he himself represented a symbol and this agenda and this vibe that they're trying to get. And there's this, I'll call him the H-Man or a dolphin, because I love that meme. But while I was making this, I thought of this meme, but it made me think back to the whole whales making dreams and reality, and that you could flip that because Hotel Kayak that I went over, or The service called Kayak, where you book hotels online, made a commercial about dolphin overlords during the pandemic, while no one was in hotels they were meeting in the tropics and planning their, Earth ruling. And it kind of made me think of that, of trapping people in consciousness, and maybe it's connected to that. And here we have Kanye West, who recently released a song about the H-Man, and the very beginning of this song, he says, "I think I'm stuck in the Matrix." And so he became a Nazi, so now he admits he's now the villain. So he's a character in a Matrix who knows he's in a Matrix, who decides to become a villain and characterizes it with Nazis and the H-Man. And now this is a meme to unpack. So these are special needs people with Downs. And this is a meme that's been going around the internet lately that has to do with Hyperborea, Agartha, spiritual ascension, Aryans, and Nazis, and aliens. And memes. And they wear these, a cross between like a medieval king outfit and a pimp. And one's talking about the H-Man. One has one that says nothing ever happens, which is kind of a meme in our reality because the big event hasn't happened yet. It's all these little things. Kind of like with the president and the island he went to. They kept teasing it, now they're trying to sweep it under the rug, so people say nothing ever happens because no one went to jail or nothing was brought up. But eventually the idea is something will happen. And then you have the "we're so back" and "it's over." And I just love that meme that I talked about in my last video as well, in the very beginning. And I go through a lot of these cycles in my own life of depression and having the energy to get back up again. And I kind of wanted to go back to this because the point I'm trying to make here is that there's a concerted effort being made to pre-program the youth and special needs children to identify with evil and Nazis. It's just like, oh my gosh, like this is what they chose. Like, oh my gosh. There's this comedy skit, these English comics, I forget the name, and they're SS officers, and they kind of start realizing, like, hey, are we the bad guys? Like, we're wearing all these skulls and we're doing bad things, and they didn't really realize that they were playing out the role of the villain because they weren't really evil. They were kind of just going along with this big story. And I watched this movie Imperium recently with Daniel Radcliffe, who plays Harry Potter, who I've been talking about. And the whole beginning of this movie is that they find this disgruntled young person and basically set him up in this giant honeypot because he's just kind of disgruntled. And it just kind of made me realize that they're predating and pre-programming like the most vulnerable and susceptible of our society, because they basically have nothing better to do because they control, most of the strings. So it's just all this crazy stuff that's been going on this whole time. And anyone normal that gets involved, doesn't really stick around that long to stay involved. So they just keep, running this script over and over and over. Like every person they find that does a mass event, they were watching already and had already talked to. Like, they're known. And this is a meme of there's one specifically, a meme that they had a honeypot where there wasn't anybody actually real there. It was just cops and federal agents of a whole bunch of different kinds, and they all were just posting online to do awful things and to try to force other people into it and slap, the worst charges ever on them and make them out to be the villain. I'm not saying to do any of that and you should take your anger out on people. It's just that it kind of makes me sad that like people might have a natural reaction to the world sucking and being taken advantage of by the society and rich people, and they just walk into a honeypot of all these federal agents that have nothing better to do than ruin special needs children's lives. Like, it's just... And I just wanted to talk about this is nothing new. They do it on every level. If you look at the Iran-Contra affair, they took drugs from South America that they helped and funded to grow and transport and help transport into the country, because if we didn't want them to come in flying into the country with a bunch of drugs, we could have stopped them. And then we then sold them to our own people in inner cities, especially, to the most vulnerable of our people that quickly, started rotting from the inside out. And then we took that money and then we gave it to people in the Middle East to form groups to fight proxy wars. And the money then would go back to drugs, and it just keeps on going. And this is public, Ollie North and all that. This was a big hearing and all that. And they just keep doing it. The first group was the Mujahideen to fight the Russians in Afghanistan. And then, they lost control of them. So they had to make the Taliban. And, the Taliban went out of control. So we had to go liberate them again. And then, we made ISIS to fight the Taliban. But then, ISIS got out of control, who were also funded and created by the CIA. I'm just wondering what the next one's going to be. And it keeps changing because now the drugs have even evolved. I was listening to this joke from a comedian the other day about how crack's not great, but you still do stuff on crack. Like I knew crackhead homeless people. They would just sit there and do stuff for, 10 hours, eat half a hamburger, and then go to sleep and then wake up and do it again. They were still doing stuff, but now with this fentanyl, they're just zombies. They're just slumped over. There's hardly any, it's just wrecking people like never before. And it's this same process. They're just flooding the streets into the most vulnerable. And I just want to take a second here that I found out a few days ago that Washington's now one of the states where everyone's dumping all their homeless people. So we have one of the highest homeless populations in the entire country. And I went walking downtown tonight, because it helps me clear my mind and, when there's no food orders on Uber, because that's also going to crap. And I was just blown away tonight by just the amount of homeless people sleeping on the sidewalk. I'm used to it. I see it and I give money to some people, but I was just because I was just walking and I almost kept just stepping on people. It was just holy moly, what is this? It's just going crazy. And I've kind of seen this for myself a little bit. But in the John Wick movies, this is one of the only main mass stream things I've seen in where the homeless are actually a secret society, because they're actually the perfect intelligence network, because no one pays them attention at all. No one wants to talk to them. No one wants to look at them and be involved. And if anyone thinks anything is up, they can just start going, ooh, and everyone's going to walk away. But it turns out that, not every homeless person, but is the perfect cover for a secret society, an intelligence agency, what have you, Satanists, because, hardcore drugs are a huge problem, stealing's a huge problem, human trafficking's a huge problem. I drive past the homeless camps every day, and I've talked to people there, this stuff is happening there, and it all aligns with all of this, because they all do this. So... moving on, I'll probably talk about this movie later because there's so much synchronicity in this movie. But the billionaire in the movie dresses up as a hobo so he can go around and beat people up at night, and no one knows it's him because no one cares. No one can follow up on him because he just runs down an alleyway and into his bat tunnel, and yeah. And like I said, this was a huge thing, and them controlling the media and just multiple levels of psychological programming towards people. And I'm very interested in the newest version today. And recently they've been ramping up, the violence idea and war and all that. And that's nothing new. But I just kind of wanted to talk to this point right here that violence and force have a weird spot in our world because just of how, not ground shaking, but just how much it can change existing systems. This is a meme that we basically became the top evolutionary predator by the mainstream story because we could throw rocks and spears. And that just kind of was such a game changer. Kind of like if you have a firearm and someone just has like a little pointy stick, like they basically have to be like Rambo and do all this crazy stuff to bridge the gap in between the force differential, just because it's just so easy for the guy with the firearm, because it's just so much greater. And this is a quote: "There's nothing so likely to produce peace as to be prepared to meet the enemy." So it's the kind of thing with bullies too. You know, bullies only pick on weak people. They can get away with it for the most part. They don't really, you know, there's a million stories of someone who's getting bullied, and like the first time they threw a punch back, they just kind of, it never happened again, because they knew they weren't an easy target anymore. And that's part of it as well. But the one underlying thing is, I think of this a lot, and I'm not so big on the first part of the quote, but force, my friends, is violence, the supreme authority from which all other authorities are derived. And I'm not talking heavily in authorities. I'm just saying, like, in the physical realm, you can make the most beautiful essay, argument, treaty, you know, civilization idea. You know, you can make the perfect utopia. And if one guy with a rock comes in and starts throwing it around, you can't stop him, well then, hey, your idea is ruined, and your piece of paper didn't stop him, because paper doesn't stop rock. So I kind of want to talk about like superpositioning and quantum tunneling and things like that for a minute, because it combines with the multiverse and actually kind of supports it. It's kind of funny because physical science and quantum science, we can't, in the mainstream way, make them compatible, but I think that's because one's describing our physical reality and one's describing the multiversal reality, and how it's all built upon each other, and how, you know, you can go past the speed of light and all that. And we also have the observer effect, that the observer effect actually changes matter around it. You know, the idea if a tree falls in the woods and no one's around to hear it, did it actually make a sound? That if you're actually looking at something, the electrons in whatever you're looking at change. So the presence of an observing force changes the reality around it, which also, you know, law of attraction and all that. And this was a Netflix series I want to talk about called Beyond the Aquila Rift. And it's about this romance story. This guy's living out with his girlfriend on a space station, yet he keeps waking up and finding out that he's actually, like, he crash landed and it's all messed up. And this creepy alien thing keeps putting him in an artificial dream. And he kind of goes along with it because he would rather go, because his alien is the girlfriend right there. But it can read his memory, so it's using the image of her, you know, like an AI would do to a person trying to, you know, I think once we go 10 years, you know, an AI trying to read your mind or appearing to be your loved ones to try to convince you to do things is not that far-fetched. And I went over this movie earlier called The Ritual, about this guy that goes hiking in the woods, and there's this son of Loki, actually, funnily enough, there. And it's collecting people with great trauma, and it's keeping them alive artificially in this little village in the middle of the woods, surrounded by, you know, all these sigils that are keeping it inside the woods. So if you don't go in the forest, it can't get you. But if you're in the forest, it can read your mind as well. So it's like creating a false reality from your memories itself. And this was explored in the Halo series with the Flood, this fungal parasite that steals your memories. And it does this so it can create a giant hive mind intelligence organism. This one's called the Grave Mind. And every zombie it steals and makes, it becomes a little smarter and smarter and smarter, you know, just like an AI system. And I just want to talk about that. The hero of that story, the thing that was special about him was luck. He wasn't the fastest, he wasn't the strongest, he wasn't the best, but he was just the luckiest, and that was the thing that carried him through. And I think luck is one of the best things you can have, because it applies to everything. Because if you're strong, there are going to be times when you need to be smart, and vice versa. But if you're lucky, it just applies to everything, and can just get you through the worst of situations. And I wanted to go back and talk about the... yesterday, I was talking about the Helldivers. and how they were combined with the Halo universe that I was just talking about with that fungal parasite. And it blew my mind. About 3 hours yesterday after I made that video, the game Helldivers announced that they're making a crossover with Halo and the orbital dropship troopers that have the quote that they're happy to jump feet first into hell with a smile on their face because they know they'll rise. They jump into the thickest point of combat and try to save the day, which I also called the Jesus or Neo effect, but it's just like 3 hours from a slide I made months, like the timing, and it just like the implications of what it means just kind of. But that's one of my favorite synchronicities too. It's like the story of the Helldivers, like just one of the ones that resonates, and not just, you know, all the guns and action, but just diving into the fire because you know you won't get stuck there. So I was talking about Skibidi Toilet earlier, and this is like the pre-programming for young kids. And I rewatched the second half, or I had never watched the second half of the series. I'd only watched the first part, and it kind of blew my mind what was happening here because it followed so many themes. So right here we have the inverted feminine, whose main thing, like this is like the Horror Babylon right here. And it's funny because it's a space toilet, right? The Skibidi space toilet. So it's literal shit or excrement or poop that's come to life and is enslaving the divine masculine because it can't get it by itself and waging this war. And this is the creator of the series and his avatar. And it's interesting because he's been putting his own avatar character into the series itself. So he's like fourth wall breaking and inserting himself into his own story he's making. And it's also one of the reasons I wonder if this is almost like a really messed up version of Lord of the Rings, because it's always been an idea that Lord of the Rings is like this giant Freemasonic truth bomb, and that's why they made all these movies and put all this effort into it and putting it into our minds, and that this is just like an updated version of that in like a weird way. And the artificial beings that are technically the good guys in this, I always thought was interesting because one's a cameraman, and it has the observer effect like I was talking about, because all these videos of the series are taken from a cameraman's point of view because they're recording everything. And they can share it with each other telepathically. And then there's the TV people and the speaker people. And it just makes me always think of see no evil, hear no evil, and speak no evil. That kind of balance. And I found this picture of a witch, you know, the inverted feminine once again. And it says, magic is stored in the butt. And, you know, I think we're all magical, and, you know, any part of us can be magic, but it just made me think back to this idea, especially of the toilets, you know, that even the waste can come to life. And moving further on, it's kind of hard to describe, but there are multiple levels of these interdimensional toilet beings. So the one that was originally attacking us just turns out to be like a small little dude, and this big inverted feminine evil is like way more of a problem. So they're teaming up. So there's hybridization between the camera people and the toilets. And even the humans. That's what I'm saying. Like, they're becoming human, robotic, and toilet all at the same time to fight this greater enemy. And it just reminds me of the quote, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And going back to Halo, they originally started out in this war between the humans and the aliens, but as this fungal parasite came up, which was worse than any of it, they had to team up to fight it. So their enemies had to become friends, and the same happens in this in the StarCraft universe. They have to team up, and the same happens in the Warhammer universe a lot of times. That two people that will team up to fight these, you know, abysmal horrors that pop up. And also, this was announced today as well, the Dawn of War trailer, which is hugely synchronous. I just find it crazy that literally a day after I made that presentation. And also, if you go back to the last video I made, there's the fourth wall breaking vlogger Helldiver slide I was talking about, where they took an AI video of a Helldiver character and he's walking around with a selfie stick like, hey chat, I'm stuck in this sci-fi universe. the Helldiver and the Warhammer 40k slides were right next to each other. So the fact that like these were the ones that pop up literally a day later, and they were both about being trapped, using AI to trap you in a sci-fi story realm, it's funny how it works. And in the StarCraft game I was just talking about, a feminine character gets inverted and taken over by this, parasite virus, and she becomes the Queen of Blades, and she becomes like the head of the Hivemind. So she's like the main villain for most of these games, this inverted feminine. And this is kind of like something I wanted to add. This is a streamer, and he's one of the famous StarCraft streamers. And I was just kind of watching this show as a hobby on my off time. And he should have won this game on paper. Like, on paper, he was, like, if there were two karate people, he was a way higher belt. He was like a black belt, and the other guy wasn't. Yet, the black belt lost. Because the other guy was just doing all this weird stuff that he could not comprehend. Like, he was not following the playbook. He was not going by the standard rules that you should play by. And doing that just, put him in a funk, and he lost. And it's also funny because he lost, from the nuke, divine masculine. And later on, he was going through a video someone made him of a bunch of AI characters talking about his stream. As he's on a stream, and there's a bunch of people talking about his stream as they're talking about the AI version of his stream that's talking about him. And I kind of wanted to go back to Oppenheimer and the atomic force, because it's the mushroom bomb. And, tying it to that fungal parasite hive mind idea I keep talking about. And I found it interesting that the shape of the, inverted physical manifestation of the divine masculine takes the form of a mushroom. And that mushrooms are known, if you eat certain ones, that they can take you places in your mind. And the Barbie movie, which is also linked to... they call it Barbenheimer, Oppenheimer and Barbie, that you have this atomic energy that they're trying to capture, and this feminine force, and that the imagination land is real somewhere else, but that also this energy is real somewhere else, and has this ability to create or destroy depending on how you view it. This is World of Warcraft. I talked about this a lot already, and how it starts out, just good versus evil, man versus alien, but then these portals open up and the demons come out and they have to team up. And this was my character, the crystal aliens of light that came from the stars that have tentacle beards. And my character was a paladin, a warrior of light that banishes demons. So it's just... and it's interesting because in this, you have these warriors of light, but they also can become warriors of death that control zombie legions. And I talked about this picture earlier. You have the undead Kundalini dragon, and he's bringing all this death to life. You can either, banish demons and heal people, or you can banish humans and bring, heal demons. So it's just all based upon will. And then I found an AI video of where basically this is an earlier version of this villain before he turns evil. And he's right here, fourth wall breaking, that he knows he's in a video game and he's going to go do it and become a villain anyway. Oh, reality. And back to Darkwoods, I was talking about. It's a video game that this meteor lands with this fungal parasite on it, and it starts mutating and warping everything, and the jungle grows so big they can't escape anymore. So they're stuck in this false reality created by this fungal parasite, and the fungal parasite wants them all to join its consciousness and its dream because it's lonely. And that's... back to the Matrix idea. This picture is just a scarier version of this. And this is a movie I just kind of wanted to insert here that had Matthew McConaughey. And it's just like this normal movie. This guy's trying to solve this murder. But then it turns out he's in a video game and it's all a dream. And it's interesting because that narrative keeps popping up. Like one of those Eastern Asian pre-programmings, these interdimensional space aliens that gave us superpowers through a fruit want to trap us all in plant pods so they can harvest our consciousness, turn it into another fruit, and then they can eat it and become small g gods and continue to travel in the multiverse and find more people they can trap in their tree. And in this series, there's people that can basically make giant people, and you can relate this to robots or giant mechanical beings through their imagination and pure energy and plasma itself. So like they can make their imagination come to life, even if that's giant, monsters. And that made me want to talk about The Thing from John Carpenter, because that's, if you take that idea that you can take your imagination and energy and shapeshift and become whatever you want, you have to look at it from the dark side. So now you have a being that can shapeshift, but because it's evil, it's been cut off from source, so it has to steal other consciousnesses into itself to continue on doing what it's doing. And I talked about this earlier too, that the solution to this, and a lot of this, and especially fungal parasites, is heat. The generative male force, pure energy. And it's also related to dogs and Sirius. There's a movie I'll go over called Together, which is a new body horror, a lot like The Thing, but it's not quite as dark. But it starts out with dogs as well, that this body horror morphing starts with a dog, or it starts with Sirius. And I'm still trying to figure that out. But, back to Naruto, that has to do with having a fox demon within. The main character has a fox demon within him that gives him these super powers, and he's basically Space Ninja Jesus. Like, I didn't make that name up, that's a meme. But that also is because of a dog, or a fox. And that kind of takes me back to the fungal parasite idea. You have the zombies from the series The Last of Us that are fungal infections, but we also have this in real life with cordyceps that can reanimate and guide, because penicillin is from fungus. LSD is derived from ergot, which is a fungus. So people think that certain times in history when they ate, people have blamed the Salem witch trials on ergot. They think one of the explanations is they ate bread and it made them trip because of the spores on it. And so these things can keep you alive with penicillin, not feel pain. They can guide your mind with visions and interface with your nervous system itself because of the mycelial networks. And in a lot of cases, it feeds off you as well to fuel itself, but it can keep you alive because of the painkillers and penicillin till it takes you where it wants to take you, back to the hive, and then it'll use you to spread more once you die. And that's why ants, a lot of times, if anyone's infected, they'll just decapitate it. They'll even sometimes kill the ants that killed the ants. They'll go to that length to keep the spores from getting into the main colony. And back to They Live, the sunglasses in They Live are called the Hoffman lenses, which were named after Hoffman, who was the one who, I don't think patented LSD. So they connect the lenses in They Live and seeing through reality with LSD, which was originally derived from ergot, and they use that in the Ancient Mysteries, in my opinion. And that takes us more to the idea about conscious plants, or using the networks of plants for consciousness, kind of like we do that with our brains. There's a lot of levels to that. And this is what are plants trying to tell you? And that's what I'm saying, is that I've gone down these rabbit holes as well. And I was saying in the last episode that a lot of this inspiration and fuel to do this and prepare is from plant wisdom, in my opinion. So I think they're both sides of it. I'm not completely sold on it, yet the world keeps getting worse, and I'm just kind of going in circles, and I want to make self-sufficient hobbit homes where people can ride out the bullshit that's happening, whether it keeps going or not, because I'm already at the point where I don't want to be here anymore. I'm an anxious wreck in a giant city, or even in the suburbs. I don't like lines, I don't like traffic, I don't like gas-powered weed whackers and mowers everywhere because the current society... Like, I used to live in a neighborhood that had all these fruit trees everywhere, and people would give each other fruit every spring, and it was so diverse. And now it's almost all gone. Like, we had cherry trees, plum trees, bamboo, raspberries, and we got rid of all of it. We have a pear tree left, and our neighbor has one apple tree left, but there used to be an orchard on his property, and it just got all cleared out, you know, that self-sufficient mindset that we had, and we just completely got rid of it, and now we're just burning the earth's lifeblood because we think it's cool to have a green lawn that's exactly the same height. Like, instead of just having goats, or, you know, just have, like, God, you know, heaven forbid we have tall grass. Like, anyway, till next time. I just wanted to say thank you, and as kind of an ending, you know, I think there are two sides to everything, so we can get caught up on, you know, what appearances look like, but we really have to take a look at the motivations and the story and where we want to go with these things. And I had a lot of fun with this. I just find it so weird, you know, that when you look at what's going on, it's just like trying to turn our youngest and most vulnerable, you know, to worship the H-man. You know, it's like I just imagine this beautiful future, but, you know, then I look out the window at what's happening, and it's just like, you know, it doesn't line up very well. So if you're here, I hope you can keep imagining this beautiful future where we can overcome these obstacles and become more self-sufficient together. And thanks for being here. And until next time, have a great day and night wherever you are. And peace.